So the next we have the consultation, and consultation means that who has information necessary to complete the task. In order to complete a task effectively, you need sufficient information and the guidelines. So for the particular activity, who will be considered as a consultation member will be decided at every activity. And the next we have the informed, who needs to be notified of task status and results. In a project team, the roles and responsibilities are designed in a way that something or someone is responsible for the progress and the status of each activity to be informed to someone. That particular person is basically acts as a person who needs to be informed or notified for the status, progress of any task. So this was all about the RACI chart. So a RACI chart lists tasks vertically and lists individuals or groups horizontally, as we can see in a table. So we can see that this chart lists the activities vertically and the roles horizontally. And for each task, the responsible will be mentioned as the accountable, responsible, or the consultant ones. Each intersecting cell contains RACI. A task may have multiple R, C, or I values or entries, but there can be only one accountable person for every row or task. To clarify, basically, who will be responsible for that task. So according to this diagram, we can see that there are a number of activities. 1 is pay for parts and services. 2, determine parts and services needed. 3, supply the parts. And 4th, install the parts. Basically, we are considering an example of a car repairing shop in which the main responsible are car owner, shop owner, the mechanic, and the part suppliers. The first activity, which is called the pay for parts and services, we can design the RACI chart as the car owner is basically accountable and responsible for payment of the parts and services. And the shop owner is basically the consultant who has the right information or the set of guidelines that how to perform the specific tasks. Similarly, for the next activity, which is called determine the parts and services needed, for this purpose, the car owner will be the consultant and the mechanic is the accountable and responsible, as well as the part suppliers are basically the consultants. The fourth activity, supply parts, for this particular activity, the shop owner is the consultant who has the sufficient information for the guideline, and the mechanic is again a consultant, and the part suppliers are basically accountable and responsible for supplying the right parts. An install parts activity, the car owner should be informed about installing the type of parts and detail of each parts, and the shop owner is accountable for installing the relevant and accurate parts, and the mechanic is responsible for the installation of these parts. So in this way, using this particular sample RACI chart, we can present the roles in a way that who is accountable, who is responsible, who is the consultant, and who should be informed for each particular task completion. So next we will discuss the staffing management plans and resource histograms. A staffing management plan describes when and how people will be added to the project teams and taken off it. Staffing management plan basically decides that in order to complete and manage a project, when and how you will need the people to be added and removed from the project activities. The level of detail may vary based on the type of the project. For example, if an IT project is expected to need 100 people on average over a year, the staffing management plan would describe the types of people needed to work on the project, such as Java programmers, business analysts, and technical writers, and the number of each type of person needed each month. So the level of detail that we will consider in a staffing management plan will be different according to the nature or the type of the project. For example, if an IT project is expected to need 100 people on an average over a year, the staffing management plan shows us that the type of the people needed to work on the project, such as some programmers or analysts or writers, and the number of type of person needed each month will be represented in this particular plan. This plan would also describe how these resources would be acquired, trained, rewarded, and reassigned after the project. So basically in this particular document you will describe that how you will utilize these resources in order to acquire, in order to train them, in order to reward them, and in order to reassign those resources after the project. So basically we have a sample resource histogram using which we can model the managers, the business analysts, the programmers, and the technical writer resources over a period of time according to the quantity in a project. The black bar represents the managers, and this line bar represents the business analysts, and this white bar represents the programmers, and this black filled bar represents the technical writers. You can use these representations in order to model the quantity of each resource using the histograms over this particular project. So now we will see that what is acquiring the project team. During the late 1990s, the IT job market became extremely competitive. In 1990s, the IT job was extremely competitive type of job considered. So it was a seller market with corporations competing furiously for a shrinking pool of qualified, experienced IT professionals. So the market was suffering from the shortage of experienced IT professionals and experts. In the early 2000s, the market declined tremendously, so the employers could be very selective in recruiting. So today, most of the organizations are facing the shortage of IT staff. So without considering the current job market, however, acquiring qualified IT professional is a critical job. There is saying that the project manager, who is the smartest person on team, has done a poor job of recruiting. In addition to recruiting team members, it is also important to assign the appropriate type and the number of people to work on project at the appropriate times. This section addresses important topics related to acquiring the project teams, resource assignment, and resource loading and leveling as well, which we will also continue in the next lecture. So basically, to acquire the right amount of human resources with right mix of skills and expertise is the key job of the project manager. So it is important to assign the right and appropriate number of people to the type of the work on a project at appropriate times. So in the current section, we will discuss different topics related to acquiring the project team, resource assignments, resource loading, and resource leveling. We will continue in the coming week's lecture. So now we will discuss the assignment which you have to submit on Sunday 24th May before 11:59 p.m. is basically in this particular task, you have to discuss the difference between the resource loading and resource leveling, and you have to provide an example of when you would use each technique. In order to manage the project resource, human resource, you need to load the appropriate resource and you need to level the appropriate resources. What are these techniques? You need to describe them with appropriate examples in order to justify your answer. So this was all about the week number 12 lecture. Inshallah, see you in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.